Hello and welcome back to Two Brothers TV. It's Nastasia back in our home kitchen, and today I have a super special guest that I am very excited to introduce everybody. This is Mark. Mark is the global brand specialist for Cacao Berry, and today we are here because he works with different vendors in the gourmet space, and we are one of his people that he comes and helps and educates and works with to co-collaborate to bring you guys the very, very best tasting food in our confectionery space. And today he's gonna serve as our product specialist and kind of technician as we build the best ever toffee chocolate chip cookies. They are some of my favorite. How we came up with this recipe is I did a lot of research online and I started combining together multiple recipes that really looked and tasted good to find the perfect formulation. So I've done all the heavy lifting for you. This is again a simple, easy recipe with all clean ingredients and including our Two Brothers chocolate and our Two Brothers toffee for you to enjoy the best cookies you have ever had in your entire life. Mark?
Absolutely, the best.
All right, the best. So now let's get going. I'm gonna prep you with starting to set your oven at 375 degrees. And we started already melting some butter. So quickly, you can find the full recipe and ingredients in the comments below and also in our blog. But to start off, just simply, you're gonna need some butter, flour, baking soda, salt, brown sugar, granulated sugar, eggs, vanilla extract, and Two Brothers chocolate and Two Brothers toffee to make this. And I'll go through piece by piece exactly how much. And Mark is going to talk to us about why the process is this way so we can better understand confectionery cooking and why certain recipes call for certain things and how it affects your taste, your texture, and your final product when you are making delicious goodies for your family and friends. So to start, we have 2 sticks of butter, unsalted butter, or 227 grams, and I've already gotten that started right here on my stovetop. And we're not only gonna fully melt the butter today, but we're actually going to brown the butter. So Mark, when I am making cookies, some recipes just say leave the butter at room temperature. Others tell you to melt it in the microwave. Our recipe today is telling you to not only melt it, but to brown it. So can you kind of walk us through these different theories of using butter when we're making cookies?
Right. Well, basically, by cooking it up and caramelizing it, if you like, it's gonna change color. You're gonna have a more nutty, burnt butter flavor. Beurre noisette, they call it in French cooking. But basically, you can have regular butter, there's nothing wrong with that. Or you can have cooked butter like this, which is going to be a different flavor profile and add a little bit more layers of flavor to the cookie. Personal preference.
You'll see on the camera as this melts, and you want to slowly stir it and kind of consistently stir it while you're making it. Don't make it too hot too fast, otherwise it can burn. Yeah. This is part of why we are choosing to melt and brown the butter is we are making a toffee chocolate chip cookie. And in the process of making our Two Brothers toffee, we also do this with the butter. And this is one of the first steps in actually creating the toffee. Now, obviously, we're gonna stop before it gets to toffee, but browning the sugar is part of our process. So making a toffee cookie, we are taking part of the toffee cooking, which is browning the sugar. Now, as we brown the sugar, I would assume a lot of people choose not to do this because it's more time consuming. We have to cook it all the way through, and then we're gonna have to let the temperature come down. But if you want something unique and really gourmet, this is gonna change the taste of your cookie quite significantly in the best way possible. So I'm gonna let it kind of keep bubbling.
You can also do this the day before, you can make a big batch of it and you can cool it down and keep it in the fridge and just use it whenever you need it, right? So it's can be labor saving later if you want to get into some volume. You can have a lot of this in the freezer as well. You could freeze some of this, no problem.
Oh wow, that's
Use it.
interesting. So now it's really foaming. I'm gonna show you guys again. This is my favorite. And as the bubbles are bubbling, you can see underneath there, they're starting to become a little bit brown, which I'm starting the caramelization process here.
It'll happen fairly quickly.
Oh, and if you could smell through the video, OMG, it smells so
You can see the
good.
brown coming through now.
Yeah, it's like a swirl.
At this stage, you know, it's just like making caramel or toffee. It can go from amber to black, you know, fairly quickly.
But we definitely don't want to burn it. So here you can see.
It's a stage now where I would say you've got some good flavor developed,
Okay.
some good color. And you know, it's subjective now. You can just decide if you want to really push the envelope and go for
Well, I'm a little risky. I'm a wild child. I turned the heat down a little, but I'm still keeping it on here. I want it to be a little bit darker. So I'm gonna go for it. Now, when we cook our toffee, we go all the way we push the limit all the way to the edge. But it is a very careful science, because to Mark's point, you could go from 1 second to the next and have a perfect product or a disaster.
And also remember, once you've turned the heat off, there's going to be a lot of residual heat in there. It will keep cooking. So you know,
So are
with,
you
with experience, you know, you might want to decide. You made these last night, right, as well. You might want to decide to take it off and transfer the liquid immediately to a cold container if you wanted to.
So here's where I'm at, and I'm gonna pull the trigger here. Do you agree?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm
That's
gonna
a
pull
good
the
flavor.
trigger, and now what we're going to do, to Mark's point, I'm not gonna leave it in this pan just for a second while I get my next part ready. I'm going to take, hold on, let me just situate this. I'm gonna take my mixing bowl right here, which is at room temp. And Mark, maybe you can help me pour this in. We'll do it over this camera. And we're gonna let the butter, you can really see the color
See the
here.
color of that?
Wow.
You see the color in there?
Yeah. So
You
you
know,
can
a lot
see
of
that.
got a lot of darker stuff at the bottom. Which is
Is
good
that
news.
okay?
This is good news. Yeah.
Okay.
That is all good flavor. It's all good
Okay.
flavor.
All right.
We're not going to waste that.
Okay.
We're going to try and get every bit of.
Now I didn't screw it up by having that dark stuff at the bottom, did I?
Nope.
Okay.
It's all about flavor, and that's good. Careful you don't burn yourself,
Okay.
of course.
Now this is hot, so don't go touching it. I just touched it. Okay, now we're gonna let this cool here while we work on the rest of the process. And I do have my temperature gun right here. We need this to cool all the way down to 125 degrees Fahrenheit. Oh, I don't know what that is in Celsius, but right now we're at like 250, 260. So it's gonna take its time coming down, which is also why you need to move it off of the hot pan, otherwise you're never gonna bring the temperature down. Why does the temperature need to come down?
Well, at the moment you have a completely separated solution. It's completely split, if you like. You've got it's not an emulsion, and when it cools down, you'll be able to bring it together and make it look more like a traditional emulsification of butter, which would be pasty and smooth and silky kind of.
Wonderful.
But you know, it's just it doesn't really matter because you're making a cookie here, so it doesn't really need to be crystallized and tempered properly because you're going to add it again and eventually you're going to beat it up.
Yeah.
Beat it up with the sugar, add the eggs and you know, the chocolate chips and the flour. And so it doesn't need to be restabilized and crystallized, if you want to call it that.
So if you're in a super rush and you need to skip this step, it sounds like it's skippable. At the same time, Mark told us that we can prep this the night before if you're going to be in a rush making your
You
cookies.
cool that down right now without even without mixing. It would just the set would be completely separate. It would be like different layers of oil and fat
Oh, okay.
and the brownness at the bottom and everything. But it doesn't matter because you're going to eventually eat it together with sugar and eggs. And
Thanks.
or you could stand here for 15 minutes and you could re-emulsify it and make it into a beautiful, you know, pat of butter. You know.
Okay. All right. Now we're going to take on to the next steps. Okay, we're back and the butter has cooled. This does take about an hour for the butter to cool. If you don't have an hour, we can cut the time by throwing it in the fridge or the freezer. And now I'm going to show you some next steps that you can do while your butter is cooling, but I saved it so we can do it together. So to start, we are going to crush up our Two Brothers toffee. Now let me explain to you a little bit today about the chocolate that we chose, and we will get into a deeper discussion with Mark, but just know that these are interchangeable. So my Two Brothers toffee that I'm using today is our dark toffee, which has a 70% chocolate on top of it. And the chocolate chips I am choosing to use for my creation is Two Brothers chocolate semi-sweet, which is a 58% cacao chocolate. Now I'm choosing a little bit less intense semi-sweet because I'm choosing the dark toffee. Now you'll need 80 grams of toffee, whichever one you choose to use. And we are going to take that. So here's what the sizing looks like. And right now is the best part of making this whole recipe. We're gonna take a hammer. I don't do housework, but I do use this hammer while I am baking and cooking. And we're gonna chop this up. Now the reason I like to use a hammer is you can make these toffee chunks as fine or as large as you like. It's really up to you, and I will see you in a minute. Okay, now this is our Two Brothers toffee original flavor called dark toffee. Inside the toffee are roasted almonds coated in a 70% Two Brothers chocolate and topped with crushed almonds. So you're getting some nut for your cookie as well while you chop this. I choose to chop mine pretty fine, and I leave a couple larger chunks for fun. We are literally gonna bake this into the chocolate chip cookie, and that step is gonna come in a little bit. So next, while your butter is cooling, we're gonna go ahead and make the flour mix. So what's gonna go in the flour mix is 2 cups or 250 grams of all-purpose flour, 1 teaspoon of baking soda, and half a teaspoon of salt. And we're gonna mix all of those ingredients together here in this separate bowl and whisk it together so it's really nicely combined and put together to make our flour mix. Pretty simple, not too difficult. All right, and once that's made, we're gonna now move into making the base of our batter inside our mixer. You can use a handheld mixer. You can even just use a spatula. I'm using my KitchenAid today because why not? If you have it, use it. Okay, so right here is my cold butter, and I'm gonna now start mixing in my sugar on low. Doesn't need to be going super crazy. So right here, pardon, before the noise begins. Right here I have 1 cup of hard packed brown sugar equals 215 grams. And here I have 1/3 of a cup or 73 grams of granulated sugar. And these are going to go into my base of my melted butter. I'll take my spatula and make sure that the edges are all combined. I ended up in my toss getting some sugar up on the sides. So I'm just pushing everything down. And this is what's making our, kind of like our caramel, right? My next step, I will take 2 large eggs. Now here is a trick. These eggs are at room temperature, so take these out as you start. Should have told you that earlier. And I have 2 teaspoons of pure vanilla extract here to add some flavors. So as I beat these eggs in, Mark, what about eggs at room temperature versus eggs that just came out of the fridge? What's the deal with that?
Most bakers and pastry chefs believe it's true that eggs will aerate and foam at a better rate.
Okay, I'm gonna just do one more quick, small, little mix here. Looks good to me.
Yep.
What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, and now I'm going to slowly add in my flour mix while I am blending this. So I'll see you in a minute. Okay, so here's the deal. You can buy chocolate at the grocery store. We know a lot of very common, I would say, commercial brands that are labeled as baking chocolate. And then we have Two Brothers chocolate made by Cacao Berry. And it is a gourmet chocolate that is intended to be used for confectionery cooking. So if I'm a normal consumer, why would I go with the Two Brothers chocolate versus what I could find at the grocery store? What is it gonna do for my cookie?
Well, typically a commercial chocolate chip would be about 45% cocoa and 55% sugar. So it's fairly good cookie. It's a good chocolate chip. Nothing wrong with it. This recipe here is going to be 58% chocolate chips, which means only 42% sugar. So you're going to end up with a more. You'll see when you bake the cookie, it's going to be more liquid. It's going to be more delicious, more creamy when you bite into it, as opposed to a commercial chocolate chip. When you bite into it, typically it's crunchy, mostly due to the fact that there's more sugar. Okay, so not all chocolate chips are created equal.
Now, the Two Brothers chocolate is also void of fillers and some things that you might find in grocery store chocolate as well, right? And so while you're baking this, instead of the chocolate chip after you bake it and maybe eat it tomorrow being super hard, this will, if you were to heat it, and you'll see when you heat it or reheat it, it turns more into like a soft, gooey chocolate. Can you explain that to us?
It's basically to do with the fat content and the sugar content, and obviously the fact that you're baking it in the oven means that essentially it becomes a little bit untempered in the oven, and then that leads to a sort of soft, gooey, finished texture. So if you want to control that, there's no reason why you should, but if you wanted to control that and have a firm cookie.
So these cookies should only be shared with people you really love because they are very special. So here's the next step. You have a couple of choices here. We like to let our cookie dough cool inside the refrigerator for...
Should be showing that off, right?
Okay.
This is a beautiful cookie dough now. Nice and
Alright.
soft, but it's getting harder and harder as it cools down, right? So see the proportion and the ratio of chocolate chips in there is absolutely fantastic. There's a very high percentage of chocolate chips in there, which is good for me as well. But it also makes a better cookie. You want more chocolate and less cookie dough, right?
Oh my gosh, you guys, this smells and looks amazing. So here's your options. We like to throw it in the refrigerator for a couple hours to cool down. You can also leave this at room temperature for 30 minutes. The reason is this needs to come together a little bit. So if you were to scoop it right now, it's gonna be really sticky. So we are gonna let this cool, and we will be right back with you so we can get these cookies into the oven. Okay, our cookie dough is cooled and rehydrated, and now what I've done is I've prepared one sheet with scooped cookies. Here's a small trick. If you zigzag them, you'll actually get in an extra row. So I've just used a scooper, making sure there's a flat edge, and then just pop these on. Now, we do not want you to push them flat or mess with them. Leave them like these little balls, and you'll see that they're gonna flatten out into a really nice cookie. We're gonna hit them in the oven for 9 to 11 minutes, and then we will be back to wrap this up and show you our final Two Brothers Toffee chocolate chip cookies. All right, these cookies are fresh out of the oven and smell and look delicious. So Two Brothers Toffee cookie recipe. Look at this ooey gooey deliciousness. We are going to let these cool. You can move them to a cooling tray or just leave them here to cool. Notice I did use parchment paper so they don't get stuck to the pan. And I made 20 cookies out of this recipe, but I was also very generous. So this recipe should make about 20 to 24 cookies. I want to thank Mark from Cacao Berry for being here today, giving us the ins and outs and insights of how to make the perfect cookie and educate us along the way. We love having you with us. So make sure you follow us at Two Brothers Toffee on Instagram, Pinterest, and Facebook. And as always, if you're using your toffee to make cool things at home, we want to know. So go ahead and upload your photos, email us, tag us, and we will feature you and hopefully use your recipes in the future. Thank you and have a wonderful rest of the time in your kitchen making your creations.
Burnt butter
Could
flavor?
you stop at just one?
No.
Two?
3. It's a 3 bite cookie.
Well, I'm taking this one. You will have that one.
This is so good. They're not even cooled and it's so good. Holy.